They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get in the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful, talented, and newly back co-host Melissa.
Yes, sorry, I've been out with a daughter who got hit by a car, out with a vacation, and then out with
COVID to wrap it up. So
it's been a rough month.
Yeah, it definitely has.
But welcome to you, sir.
Well, thank you. Hey, I'm super excited to introduce you guys to our next guest. This is Clay Hepler. He's the CEO, founder, leader, businessman, boss of Hepler Land Holdings. And I'm sure we're going to get into that. Clay, thank you so much for finding time for us today, man. We're really excited to hear about you and hear your story and get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pumped. And Melissa, I hope it went COVID and then daughter and then vacation so you can get a relax. Like I'm thinking about it in my head. I'm like, I hope it's like that, but I bet you it didn't plan out like that.
It was
so good to be with you. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was definitely daughter, car accident, vacation, COVID. I'm sure the COVID from the vacation.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, she was down for a count for a little while.
But we're happy you're here and happy to have you as our first guest on the return.
Yeah. So Clay, man, for those in our audience who don't know you, don't know where you came from, can you just, give us the rundown of where you started, where you're at now, and then we'll take the conversation where it goes.
For sure. So I am a recovering rental property investor. So I am not recovering. Actually, I'm probably going to stay away from that for a little bit because I found the incredible niche of land investment and land flipping. My background is in wholesaling and house flipping. So, if we're talking getting into real estate, I got into real estate going in a track that I recommend a lot of people do, right? Which is find someone who really knows what they're doing and go and learn from them and get paid to do it, right? And so I joined a guy in my city who owned a real estate investment company, had like 400, 500 units, and I cut my teeth with him, learned on his dime, added a lot of value, built a wholesaling and house flipping business. We did 75 deals in our first year. Then I started to buy my own rental properties, doing the BRRRR strategy, buying them, rehabbing them, renting them out, refinancing, right? And so that was during a period of time where interest rates were much lower than they are today and had a lot of success doing that. And a couple of years ago, the day before Thanksgiving, my wife gave me a call. And, my wife at that point was kind of floating our lives, right? I was out there having fun, buying rental properties. And as you guys know, the cash flow is not as nice as they say on the television, right? Right.
Sure.
And so, but I thought it was like, man, I bought 65 units in 1 year and I'm crushing it, right? Doing the BRRRR strategy. Well, when you got older buildings, they don't cash flow as well as you think. And so when my wife called me, she had this great salary, 6-figure salary, and she was in tears. And she said, my company went under. Basically, the company that she was working for, I had a bunch of investor capital that was supposed to hit, never hit, and it went under. So that entire month's paycheck, we didn't get. And I had to figure out a way to make money quickly. My wife and I were having our wedding that next year. We recently bought an Airbnb, a vacation home in Colorado, and we had to pay for our lives. So we had some savings, and I decided, hey, I need to find something quickly to make money, or bankruptcy was like certain. I mean, I make it sound very casual now, but it was like a period of time in my life that was, for a year, right? A year, it was like an endless hamster wheel and like taking a little bit of breath when I had my wedding and then going back under, right? It was like that. But I built a land flipping business. I found out about the blue ocean of land flipping. I had the background in wholesaling and house flipping, and there weren't a lot of people talking about it. And so the model is pretty similar. Find a piece of land for undervalued, add a little bit of value to it, buy it with cash, and sell it, right? Sell it for a higher dollar amount, just like house flipping. Improve the house and make a little bit of money. That's what we're doing with land, but it's a little bit more of a blue ocean, right? There's not as many people in there. There's a lot less competition, and that's what attracted to it me initially. So I took a couple of courses. After like a week after, I bought a course right away, then bought another course and went full on into land investing. And now I have a team of 8 people. I'm hiring another 5 people next week in our cold calling team. I'm hiring an operations manager, like a COO type, in 2 weeks. And our land business is looking really, really good. We're a multi-7-figure land flipping business. So it ended up working out, but at the beginning, it didn't look like it would.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of investors have that same story, that same struggle of like, it's either make or break. So we're glad that you ended up making it. I am curious. So when you're talking about creating value in land, are you talking about entitlement? Are you talking about splitting properties or splitting parcels? What is your strategy? Give us a rundown of what some of your typical deals look like, if there is such.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. It could tell you know what you're doing, right? Because a lot of people say, "What? How do you do it?" So I think about land in sort of 3 ways, right? If we're going to use an analogy of animals, right? You have a rabbit, right? You have a gazelle, and you have an elephant, right? In terms of, there's this great metaphor. I heard it first on the Tim Ferriss podcast about like, are you chasing it's like gazelle or field mice or gazelle? If you're a lion, you can spend all your day chasing these little field mice, and eventually you'll starve because these smaller deals don't really pay the bills. You guys probably know about that in your business. And if you get one big deal, it totally changes the game. In land, it's very similar, right? You can go after crappy properties in the middle of nowhere desert, right? You can go after kind of the middle market, the blue ocean, making 50 to 100 grand a pop, or 20 to 60 grand a pop. Or you can go after the entitlement deals, which is what you're talking about. Multi-6-figure paycheck, 12-month, 18-month, maybe 7-figure paycheck, longer, big value add deals.
Mm-hmm.
I am in that middle tranche. So what I do is, when you say add value to a property, you know how when you go into a house, you say, hey, I know I can kind of improve this bathroom here. I can open up this floor concept. I can just help people see the value in this house. I'm not really going to do a lot here. I'm not going to change the structure, but I'm going to do some basic stuff, and someone's going to walk into it and say, this is really beautiful. We do the same exact thing with land. Most people can't see the forest from the trees, right? Like, I mean that. When they lock on a piece of land, they just see a bunch of trees. What we can do is we can go in there, we can carve out a home site. Maybe we subdivide a couple of parcels out. We make it ready-made. We market these things with professional drone photos. We might dig a well. We might put a perk test in. We might have gravel driveway and put a mailbox up and get a PO box so that there's actually an address there. We do these small things to really add value. And so that's how we add value to rural recreational land. I mean, a lot of it, guys, is I know the market really well. Like, why can people go to a garage sale, right, and buy something for $20 and sell it for $100? Well, they just know how to market that, beanie bag toy. We do the same thing with land. We know the markets really well, and it's not that difficult to do. But you build that market intelligence, then you add the value add component, which is like these basic things that we're talking about here. And the end result is profits, building a really profitable land flipping business.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. I really like the way you're almost doing like a lot of times with houses, we'll get them at a discount. They'll be complete hoarder houses. We'll go in, pay a crew guys to go and clean that out. And then pay a cleaning crew to go in and actually clean it and then list it on the market.
I love the mailbox though.
That's
really good.
Yeah, great. Carve out the home site and put a mailbox on there and call it a day. That's something we haven't heard before, but that makes so much sense. That's a genius move. I really like that.
Are you closing on most of these, or are you wholesaling them? What does that look like?
That's a great. Yeah. So when I look at a piece of land, when I look at it from the perspective of what value can I add to this, I'm trying to do highest and best use, right? So if I am in flipping this and I'm doing the home site thing like we just talked about, that might be the highest and best use from what we currently have. If there's a little bit more of a risk profile, we might end up wholesaling it, right? We have less money into it, but most of the time we're going to buy these things with cash. So we'll raise investor funds or work with funding partners and split the equity and close on these deals. So a lot of times we're doing that closing, but depending on the marketing, depending on the risk profile, we will decide, hey, we want to do wholesaling. That's another reason why I love land. We can also do a lot of owner financing. So I do a lot of owner financing as well. I'll subdivide a parcel out, owner finance it, attach a really attractive interest rate on it for us. And the person loves it. They get the land for a low down payment and we help finance them. And we love it because it's not like a house, right? If you owner finance a house, someone might go in there and they're pissed off at you and they bust up the pipes, right? And in land, it's like, what are you going to do? Just burn the ground? It's kind of like, okay. Not a lot of people are going to do that. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I think that's great. That's a really good strategy. So now, are you doing this virtually? Are you staying? Because I know we were talking before. You have done some deals down in our area. Are you all over the country? Are you nationwide? What markets are you operating in? You don't have to give specifics, but just general.
Right. Yeah, right. I am in many markets, to be fair, right? So what's really interesting about land is like you have a city, right? If you're in Orlando, Florida, let's say, for example, man, there's so many houses in Orlando, Florida. There's like 1 million houses in Orlando, Florida. 1 million pieces of land. There are trillions and trillions of dollars worth of land and millions of acres of land, but you got to go to a bunch of different markets. One county might only have 1,500 pieces of land, right? And 1,500 houses, you can work on that over time, but we go to a lot of different markets because of the volume that we're doing, right? Because of the type of business that we're doing. But we'll re-hit markets. We're in a couple of core states, but we are in many counties. Like there's a couple of states that I've hit pretty much every county in.
And then how do you identify within that county what your target is?
That's a great question. So for us, we really focus on our acreage range. So at the highest level, we want to find parcels that are, when we're scrubbing them, when we're looking for, they have buildability characteristics, right? So if I'm in Florida, right? In Florida, there's a lot of wetlands, right? There's just a lot of wetlands, and whether it's preserved wetlands because of Venus flytrap or some flower, right? You guys know about that? Yeah, the box turtle or whatever. Right. You can't build on that. Right. Or it's just wetlands because Florida's highest elevation is like 248 feet. Right. So we scrub out a lot of the parcels that are non-buildable, maybe FEMA floodplain, maybe on the side of a hill, things like that. So that actually will reduce the total amount of parcels that we can even market to and focus on. And then the way we look at it currently, if we're just focusing on our bread and butter model, is we want to be in an exit price at this point, 70,000. At the minimum, right? And so 70,000. Yeah. So if a county, for example, has 2 acres that are selling for 70,000, okay, we'll look at 2 acres, right? Enough. Okay. And then we'll get a little bit more specific on exactly like what 2 acres we want to focus on. But if it's 10 acres that are 70,000 or 20 acres, then we'll make sure that we're only targeting those acreage ranges. We're more concerned about acreage range than we are concerned about 1940s brick in newer, right? That type of deal.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, so can you tell us a little bit about like, hey, what's your marketing strategy right now, and what your process is from the time you picked your location, you found all the $70,000 properties, and you start trying to contact them, and then tell your dispo process. What does that look like?
Right. So we use a lot of the same marketing channels, which is why it was very easy for me to go from wholesaling to house flipping to land, reaching out, cold calling, direct mail, PPC, Facebook ads, and texting, all these channels. We use the same exact channels in land, really. So it's we're in a direct marketing business. I don't try to overcomplicate it. We work on the marketing channels that work, and we scale those marketing channels from there. That's exactly how we reach out to people. The more important thing is the sales process, right? Because a lot of people are using a similar type of marketing. What's more important is that we have a robust, bulletproof sales process that we can rely on to consistently and predictably produce results. And so that's really what I focus on in my business. That's what I focus on when I talk to people about building this business is there are two things that are really important: market selection, right, which is what we talked about earlier, really finding the right market. And then when people call into your business, you got to know how to close them. You got to have a good sales process.
Yeah.
And those are the 80-20 of land investing.
Sure. And then you're in multiple different markets. Are you creating your own buyers list in each of those different markets? Are you partnering with local investors? What are you doing to dispo the wholesale deals or meet with builders or in buyers to dispose of the deals that you're getting?
Right. So again, great question. I could tell that you're an experienced investor here. So we rely on brokers. So we work on rural recreational tracts. That's another thing that's really interesting about our model. Like, I'm not in Orlando, Florida. I'm outside of Orlando, Florida. I'm an hour or 2 hours outside of major metro areas because we find that the market asymmetry, the information asymmetry, and our ability to produce predictable profits are higher there because there's just less competition, right?
True.
And so we have to rely on the specialists of those areas, the disposition specialist, the broker. And so we'll find a local broker is going to help us sell the parcel. So if we are going to wholesale, we will list it with a broker. And if we're going to sell it as is, we're buying it, we're going to list it with a broker too. And I talk about that extensively, how to find the right broker, because a lot of residential brokers want to be land brokers. And it's like it's like an industrial broker trying to sell a house.
Right.
It's just not the same, right? And so that's the whole thing that we rely on in our land business.
Yeah, that's great.
And then what's your team look like?
So currently I have 8 people on my team. Next week it will be 13. And in the following week it'll be 14. So we have a pretty decent sized team. I try to be pretty lean. But that's the structure of my team currently.
What are the roles and responsibilities within the team?
So me, COO, operations manager, COO. Yeah, that's as a CEO. I know you have that shirt on. As a blessing. It's just a blessing. I can't wait for him to come in, right? Because it's just really helpful in our business. I have an executive assistant. I have a transaction coordinator. 5 cold callers. I'm going to lose count right now, and I'm probably going to forget someone. 2 lead managers, closer, data analyst, data scrubber. That's kind of, I'm probably blanking on 1 or 2 people, but
Sure.
Sorry, CEO, you're going to blank on stuff. But that's the kind of current structure, right? So we're really sales heavy, right? As you can tell. And that's our texter too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we started recording, we were talking about cold callers. Do you mind getting into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I would say that I'm not. It sounds like you guys are quite fluent with that process. I'm just starting to build this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning right now. I've had one-off cold callers, but I'm now going to be building out a team. And so, one of the things that I found is that because of the types of properties that we go after, and again, this could be a limiting mindset, but the very thick accent is really kind of puts you at a disadvantage, right? Because everyone and their mother is trying to do cold calling. And if you have a thick accent, Jim Bob that owns 50 acres in Texas is going to say, I'm sorry, click. Right. Yeah. And so I'm trying to find the cold callers at a cost that have attractive accents for me is a growing concern and something that I'm really trying to work on.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things that we've come across. One is Lead Mining Pros. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. We've had the owner, his name's Nick, on our podcast. He uses American cold callers, and I think you can get like 3,000 dials for right around $2,000, I think, maybe plus or minus. I haven't looked at it in a little while. And he does some text messaging and stuff. And so that's a good option while you're building your own team, I think. And some people, that's a great option, but you can get American cold callers. He also has Filipino cold callers. But the American cold callers, especially for land, we found have been really great. But it's not lead nurturing. It's not anything else. It's just, hey, here's this parcel of land. Do you want to sell? They ask like 10 questions and then forward you that lead. If you get a lead, we always get 1 to 2 deals, and most of them are land every package that we get. And that's like roughly 50% of our typical deal cost is the equivalent price. So usually we're like $4,500 to $5,000 per deal when we're looking at KPIs, but with him it's like $2,100, $2,200, something like that. Will get us 2 deals. So that's one thing. And then the other service that we use, we've hired a bunch of VAs from different services, Rocket Station. We've tried hiring them on our own. But the thing that we've had the most success with is a company called Hire Train VA with a lady named Val Berga. We also had her on the podcast at one point. She used to work as a cold caller for Blackjack Real Estate, which was a really, in our area, a very good wholesaling company, but then she spun off and created her own. And that's where we found our most recent cold caller, who's probably the best ever. He's from South America, and he grew up and was raised in America, and then left and went back down to South America. He speaks fluent Spanish, which is great for our area. We've interviewed a bunch of Egyptians, some Russians or Ukrainians, I think, and they have Filipino cold callers as well. But our best results by far have been South America. The personality type is a little bit more dominant. He's great, our guy, Ralph, because he grew up in America, so he understands sarcasm, he understands that kind of stuff, but he still has kind of a little bit of a machismo where he'll push a little bit more than some of our the Filipino cold callers. They're very reserved, nice, they're great. They do a good job, but they're not as pushy or forward as Ralph is.
But part of our process in the beginning is they know when they're bringing us somebody to interview that we don't want anybody that has a heavy accent. I don't want anybody who even has a medium accent. I want there to be as little as possible. That's how we're going to gauge whether we'll hire them or not. Because being from Florida, exactly what you said about the good old boy in Texas, they won't even say sorry. They will just berate them and just make their life miserable talking to these poor callers. And so we can't have any accent.
Yeah.
Because most people are willing to settle for, I'm just going to get super cheap labor. And in reality, cheap labor doesn't mean anything if you're getting cheap leads, right? And absolutely. So it's important to pay a little bit more, but I found too, like the Spanish is critical, and I know Belize and Colombia, there's some really, really good VAs. So I'm looking into that too for acquisition managers and just in general. That Spanish component, man, it's just, I mean, you guys in Florida, it's prevalent, but everywhere in the United States, I mean, it's like more people speak Spanish than English now, right? And so you just got to be with the times.
One of the things that we recently did on our postcards is we just put, we speak Spanish, and a direct number directly to that VA that speaks Spanish. And it's great because we're reaching people that a lot of other people aren't connecting with because they don't have the ability to communicate effectively.
Yeah. It's very important, right? It's as we scale these businesses, right? The era of less than buttoned up organizations are gone, right? In order to continue to build a thriving business, you got to take this thing like a business, right? It's not like a side hobby anymore. And that's what I talk about. I talk about that all the time. I'm very active on social media about it. In our accelerator course, I'm very much like, guys, you got to, if you're going to build this business, if you're going to build something that's worth something for yourself, for your kids, to get you to financial freedom, you got to take this thing seriously, right? It's not the hopes and dreams that a lot of gurus will sell you, right? Oh, you can spend 2 hours a week and build a thriving Amazon e-commerce store. It's like, no, you have to work hard, right? You actually have to work hard. And sometimes that's sobering and sometimes it turns people off, but it's required in order to be successful in any business. And real estate's just a business that has a lower barrier of entry. So you can build a life. And obviously you guys have done it. I've done it, a life that we really love through this business, but it's through hard work, man. It's not through sitting back and sipping Mai Tais and getting on the laptop every 2 hours.
So with that in mind, what do you tell aspiring investors who are looking at getting into this? How should they start? What's important? What's not important? How do you stay on track instead of chasing every shiny object?
Well, I think that one of the most important things is that when you look at yourself, you have to understand what type of investor you are, right? There are people that are much better in rental properties than they are in, for example, flipping houses. I'm a broker dealer guy. I did the rental property thing. I'm the art of the deal guy, right? I love to get deals together. I love to put them together. I love to be creative and I like to transact. That's why this business fits really well with me. But what I would say for someone that's maybe, you're out there, you're a beginner investor and you're interested in land, I would say land is an incredible asset class to get into because it is a blue ocean relative to wholesaling and house flipping. You go down to RIA, you hear people talking about multifamily, single family, wholesaling, house flipping. Very few people talk about land. And so you're putting yourself in a position from the jump in order to profit. Number two, I would say
sexy.
It's right. Exactly. It's not as sexy. It's not as flashy. And that's okay. Right. I welcome that opportunity. Right. And then number two, it's like, if you're going to do something, whatever you do, make sure that you're aligned with the right people. Don't just go out and buy a course if you're not aligned with the person that you're working with, right? Because it's really important. A lot of people will just go out and just spend money and then they're dissatisfied. In reality, they have to look themselves in the mirror and say, is this someone that I would want to work with, right? If you're trying to do any sort of course. So I would say get involved. This is how I got into the house flipping business, multifamily. I invest in my education. I think it's the best way to do it, but you got to be realistic about what you could achieve with your timelines, with everything in your life, and make sure that whomever you work with is aligned with you. And then they have a strategy that's really going to fit your personal circumstances. Because a single dad of 3 is going to have a really different experience than someone who's 25 years old and has unlimited time, right? It's going to be different. And so you have to understand that when you go into whatever pursuit you're going into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. Well, Clay, if our listeners wanted to find out more about you, what you guys are doing, if they're more interested in land, where can we send them to find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm very active on social media, Clay Hepler everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, very active, very big Twitter guy. And if you are interested in learning about land a little bit more, you can go on to land-man.io. It's land-man.io, which is a website. It'll talk you through, hey, you can get a free case study about the top 3 secrets to build a 6-figure land flipping business and just learn a little bit more about land. But if you want to just start and learn about it from afar, kind of lurk a little bit, feel free to check me out on social media. And there's a newsletter there as well, which I offer free content on.
Awesome, man. Well,
thank you, Clay. That was fantastic.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. That was a lot of good info packed into a short amount of time, and we really appreciate it. But
guys, it was very nice to meet you. I'm going to see you guys sending me. You're going to be texting me photos of mailboxes on your land deals.
Yeah, that's right.
And we'll talk soon, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.